Today I'm going to do an overview of all my Beatles LPs. All my information comes from this book here, most of it. This is an old book, but there's updated ones, I'm sure. That's where I get all my information for my Beatles stuff. First album I have is Introducing the Beatles. This was released in July '63. It's the third issue, printed on the VJ label. Awesome label. A couple things about this. The third issue, Please Please Me and Ask Me Why on here replaced P.S. I Love You and Love Me Do. So the original one from like months before had P.S. I Love You and Love Me Do on the label, and they switched it on this one. So that one, the first one, is actually worth a little more money. The next album that came out from the Beatles was Meet the Beatles in January of '64. I have a mono issue here, and always the monos are always worth a little more than the stereo, it seems like. All my albums are in really good shape. Some of the covers aren't, but that's the Capitol label. So original albums. Next one that came out in April of '64 was the second album. This is all like the United States issues. Let's see, this one's stereo or mono. I have both. This is the mono version on the Capitol label. Nothing too weird about that. And I have this one on stereo. Same thing, it's the Capitol label on that as well. Okay, next Beatle albums that came out was Hard Day's Night. That came out in June of '64. This is the mono version, and this was because of the movie and everything, I guess, was released on the United Artist label. This is a first issue here. The credits on this, This Boy and I Cry Instead was mislabeled. On all the albums, instead of I'll Cry Instead, it says I Cry Instead. But down here it is, what is it? What the heck's going on? So they credit it to McLean and something down here. And that's the how you can tell it's the very first issue of Hard Day's Night. So, and that is also, well, I showed that United Artists label. Next album that came out was Something New in July of '64. This one came out on the Apple label. Wait a second, that's an old one. Yeah, I have a new release of Something New, because of course it didn't come out on Apple in '64. So I have that one, and I also have Something New on the even newer issue on the Capitol purple label. So that's pretty cool. So many different labels and stuff when it comes to Beatles albums and telling fakes from original issues. Beatles '65 was released in December of '64. It's on the Capitol Rainbow label, one I love. I just love that label. This is a mono version that I have here. And there's the back of it. The next album released was, this was called Hear the Beatles, and it was just the Beatles talking and such. It was released in '64. It only came out in mono. And there were a lot of fakes on this. It was a VJ label. There were a lot of fakes put out on this album, and one way you can tell it's not a fake is on the spine. It's actually printed on the spine. The fakes will not have printing on the spine. And as in all old Beatle albums, you have to look at the quality of the cardboard made. It'll always be brown. If you see white cardboard and it's real thin, it's a fake. It's not original. This was a cool one. Came out in October '64. It's a mono album. The album, it's a weird fold here like this. Now the album inside is the same album. It's called Introducing the Beatles, which is the same as that very first album that I showed. That's the album they put in this. But it was just a new cover and everything, so that was a pretty cool one on the VJ label. And next one I have is the Beatles collection of the Christmas collection. Now this they released as a 45 each year, starting in 64, I think. And so if you have the original 45s, that's where the money is. This is just a bootleg reissue of all the Christmas songs that they put out. These are pretty cool though. They're really fun stuff, and the Beatles are getting crazy and talking funny and stuff like that, man. You know how they do. And we have the early Beatles, released in March of '65. I have the stereo issue here on the Capitol rainbow label. Nothing too fancy about that one, just another great album with good hits by the Fab Four. Next came Beatles 6. This came out in June '65. This is a mono issue. This is one of the first issues, and you can tell that by the label says "See label for correct playing order" on there. Somebody wrote, a lot of my covers aren't in great shape, but if it says that on there, it's the very first issue. Later on, they put the songs in the right order and got rid of that. Next album that came out was another movie, because they've made two, you know. This one was Help. And Help was released in August of '65. This is a stereo issue I have here on the Capitol label. Anybody know what the next album was? It was a good one. And the Beatles are starting to get a little heavier now. Came out with Rubber Soul. Great album. Came out in Christmas of '65. This is a stereo issue I have here on the Capitol label. Next was Yesterday and Today, which if you have the original Butcher cover album, you've got a real find there. This was issued in June of '66. It's also just a stereo issue of on Capitol rainbow label. Probably can't see that? Okay. I think you know what it looks like by now, though. So that's a great album too. But you know, with Rubber Soul, that one, and then this album was like changed the Beatles a lot, I think. Revolver got really heavy, and that was got into their, you know, drug years and stuff, more or less, and they started experimenting a lot more. This is a stereo album that I have, August of '66. This one came out. As you can tell, the Beatles put out tons of albums, you know, a few a year. They were just knocking them out. And they have all that, and it's only '66. Then came another really awesome album, Magical Mystery Tour. Came out in November of '67. It has the gatefold, opens up, has a 24-page book in it. Some pretty cool stuff in here. So that's, again, you know, some of my covers aren't in great shape. All my albums are in really good shape. After that came out, one of their biggest hits for that time was the Sgt. Pepper's album. And that came out in June of '67. This is the mono version I have right here. Opens up to have all four Beatles in there. It came with this insert, which you were supposed to cut out and put the mustache on and play around and have fun with. But you know, all those things make it worth more money having those original printed pieces. That was on the Capitol label. Peppers. I have Sgt. Pepper's picture disc. This wasn't released till 1978, but it's pretty cool. You can still play it. It's the same on both sides. On this one, there's another issue too, and that is this one. It's a little closer up on everything, and on the back is the drum. Okay. We have Beatles' White Album.